name of this video is Fun with Bands, and that's all it was going to be about. Then I knew that I could not give a complete explanation about why or where we were using bands in some of these exercises. So I knew we'd first have to go over some biomechanics. The long title would be Innovative Ways to Use Exercise Bands for More Effective Training and an overview of exercise biomechanics. In a nutshell, bands are great for some exercises and not great for others. So I touched on some exercise physics and biomechanics in another video called Shoulder Strengthening and Stabilization, and promised a more in-depth video on biomechanics. So here it is. There are 9 ways that weight or resistance is generated for exercise. One is weight or gravity, using a dumbbell, barbell, kettlebell, or our own body weight. The only direction that this force weight resistant moves is straight down. You can manipulate this downward force by using lever arms or angles or pulleys or cams, but gravity pushes it downward. When you use a weight machine, you use handles or arms that pull or push weight in any direction. 3 is a spring. There are coil springs and lever springs and tension springs. 4 are bands. Bands have no resistance when they are not stretched. As you pull the band, it creates more resistance until it is fully stretched. 5 are magnets. These have primarily been used on cardio machines, but more weightlifting machines are now using these magnets to generate resistance or weight. 6 are alternators or machinery which generates resistance. 7 are any elements like air resistance or water resistance which cause drag or tension and usually incorporate a flywheel. An example of this would be rowers. Rowers use both. 8 are wheels or rollers under tension as they are tightened. 9 are pneumatic. It's air pressure or hydraulic fluid pressure. You usually see these on cruise ships or environments that are not stable. I may have missed something, but that covers most. If you pick up 10 pounds, the weight will remain 10 pounds as you lift it into the air. If you pull a weight of 10 pounds on a cable machine using a single pulley and the weight stack is marked 10 pounds, the weight will remain approximately 10 pounds throughout the entire movement, more or less, depending on the machine. So the weight of 10 pounds would be the actual weight. The weight or resistance is equal to 10 pounds. Now there is something called effective force. Effective force is the force that your muscles, your body, must exert to overcome this actual weight, or in this case, the weight attached to a cable or weight in the form of resistance from a band that is under tension. Let's use 2 exercises as examples. First, the pull-up, or in this specific example, the chin-up, where your palms are facing your body, like this. We're primarily using our back to pull our body up from an almost dead hang until our chin is over the bar. We also use our biceps, forearms, shoulders, and of course our core. Again, our muscles do not have the same effective force during all parts of their contraction or movement. In this example, our lats are weaker and stronger in different positions during this exercise. This can be measured in degrees. Take a look at this diagram. When the arms are completely extended during the hang, the back is completely stretched. The lats have less strength than midway through the movement. So here. Part 1. There are 2 axis points, or pivot points, used in this exercise. An axis point is the central point around which a wheel or lever pivots. In this case, our main axis point, or pivot point, is the shoulder. And the secondary is the elbow. So here and here, we're moving this way. This works just like it does in mechanical systems. Think of your elbow and shoulder as hinge joints or hinge points. Part 2. We're also using a lever. The lever in this case is the upper arm from here to here. The elbow starts at the top and ends at the bottom. It goes through almost 180 degrees of motion. Here, down. Let's take a look at this chin-up diagram. In the green zone, your body is hanging, so there is 0 pounds of actual weight that your muscles need to overcome. From green to yellow or so of the chin-up, from dead hang, our lats can apply very little effective force as the muscles are completely stretched and have a difficult time contracting. In the yellow zone, our lats can exert slightly more effective force. So nothing here, a little bit more, and then you're going to get power here. In the red zone, and just above and below, our muscles are at their strongest, which means that they can apply the most effective force on the resistance. In this case, the resistance is our body weight In this example, the weight of an object which weighs approximately 200 pounds. Notice that the weight, our body, is the heaviest between approximately 70 to 120 degrees. How can that be? How can our body be heavier at this point than other points? Isn't the same body weight the same 200 pounds? Yes and no. Yes, we weigh the same. No, because there are three factors acting on our body. One, on the one hand, our back, shoulders, and biceps, our muscles, can generate the most effective force during the position, during the contraction or movement, here to here. But two, during a chin-up, our upper arm acts as a lever, with the shoulder as the main pivot point. A body weight of 200 pounds creates torque, or a rotational force, which determines how difficult the movement feels. Torque is highest when the upper arm is horizontal at 90 degrees, because the force is fully perpendicular to the lever. As the angle changes, either closer to the top or to the bottom, torque decreases. Less distance here, less distance here, most distance here. And three, the longer the lever arm, in this case, our upper arm, the more torque is applied. So the heavier the force will be, as the torque required from the shoulder muscles would be double if our arm was 32 inches long, rather than the average upper arm length of a man of 16 inches. So instead of here, from here to here. The shorter the lever, the easier it is to pull. The longer the lever, the harder it is to pull. This is going to be important later on. I don't want to get too far in the weeds on all this stuff, but it's important to understand what is happening when we perform and how we perform each exercise, so we're being the most efficient, safe, and effective with all our efforts and time. Okay, let's look at our second example, the chest fly or pectoral fly exercise. We are primarily using our pecs or chest. Again, our muscles do not have the same effective force during all parts of their contraction or movement. In this example, our chest or pecs are weaker and stronger at different positions during the exercise or contraction, just like in all exercises. Take a look at this second diagram. When the arms are completely extended at approximately 90 degrees and the muscles in the chest are completely stretched all the way out here, we have very little power. Part one, in this exercise, there is one axis point or pivot point right here. Remember, an axis point is the central point around which a wheel or lever pivots. In this case, the axis point is the shoulder, doing this. Again, this works just like it does in mechanical systems. Think of the hole in the center of a wheel or the end of a hinge. Here's the hole going through here. Part two, here again, we are using a lever. The lever in this case is our entire arm, which goes through approximately 120 degrees of motion. So here, all the way through here, both sides. Let's take a look at this pec fly diagram. Our body is lying flat on the bench with the arms wide open at the side. So our arms are in the yellow zone at 90 to 110 degrees. So 90's here even. And then if you're back a little bit further than the bench, it's 110. Okay, experiencing the most torque force. The muscles are lengthened and they have very little power. So the chest is weak, but the weight feels heavier because the lever arm. Our chest has very little effective force in this position. As the angle decreases and our arms get to about 70 degrees or so, the red zone, our muscle fibers shorten and the torque angle we discussed earlier decreases. So we now can generate the most effective force right in here. As we approach 10 degrees up the top or so in the upper yellow zone, our muscles have completely contracted. That's about it at this point. It cannot generate much more effective force. As we pass 0 degrees, which for most people make this mistake, in other words, they cross the plane between the shoulder joint and the center of the body, the resistance on our chest becomes 0. So here, force, gravity is coming down here and it's 0, and then they pass here. There's nothing happening here. You're actually crossing the plane. Okay, finally, let's discuss the Nautilus cam. An exercise scientist named Arthur Jones invented the Nautilus cam in the 1960s and began using it in the 1970s in Nautilus machines. I talk about Arthur Jones and the Nautilus cam all the time because it revolutionized fitness by really incorporating biomechanics and lifting in a revolutionary way. So we already discussed all of the principles involved in the cam design. That's why I started at the beginning and we worked our way to the cam. Since its invention, most manufacturing companies have copied the cam design, some better than others. And if you go to a gym, you have probably seen an all-less shell or kidney bean looking wheels on various machines and equipment. It works like this. Arthur Jones knew about actual weight. He knew about effective force, that our muscles are weaker and stronger at different points of the exercise. He knew about torque and lever arms and axis points and pivot points, and he put it all together. The cam is essentially a series of levers which change length as the camera wheel rotates through various degrees around a pivot point or axis point. And the cam is calibrated or aligned with our body's movement, effective force. It's really ingenious. Let's use the chest pec fly example. When your pecs are at the weakest, the yellow zone, the distance between the cam's pivot or axis point is shortest. That means that although the cam is essentially an odd-shaped wheel, at every point along the odd-shaped wheel, the distance between the pivot point and the edge of the wheel changes, and that distance is essentially a lever arm. When the lever arm is short, the weight of resistance becomes less. When the lever arm is long, the weight of resistance becomes more. Why is this such a great thing? Because if you were performing a pec fly with a regular wheel and pulley, when you lift 10 pounds, the weight will remain approximately 10 pounds throughout the movement. But your chest or pecs are capable of lifting even more than this during your strongest phase of the movement, the red zone. So when your arms are completely out at 90 degrees or even 110 degrees, 10 pounds may seem heavy, but in the red zone, 10 pounds will become light. So what the cam does is adjust or change the 10-pound weight and make it lighter during your pec's weakest points and heavier during your pec's strongest points, because the lever arm changes length. A 1x lever arm requires half the effort of a 2x lever arm. Okay, finally, on to bands. If you use a band, the band has zero resistance when it is not being stretched. That makes sense. Nothing, no resistance. Let's go back to our chin-up example and keep in mind all the information we just discussed. Here's a chin-up or pull-up band diagram. Again, keeping in mind the idea of effective force, levers, pivot and axis points, muscle contractions, etc. If we know that a person's weakest points during this exercise are at the bottom, dead hang, and first degrees of movement or contraction, and again at the top, the last degrees of movement. So down here again, can't get much force here. At the top, you get stuck again at the top. The lats have completely shortened and contracted, and so have the biceps. And that around the middle of the chin, we have the most effective force, okay? In the middle of the chin up, the most effective force. We want to utilize the bands accordingly. Note that every person is going to be a little bit different. There are variables like upper arm length, leg length, the individual muscles and tendon strength. In this case, we are helping a person to do chin-ups on their own, or perhaps helping them achieve more pull-ups on their own. Their sticking point is at the bottom and at the top. In this example, we are using a red band, which when fully stretched applies 20 pounds of resistance, or takes 20 pounds of weight off their total body weight of, say, 200 pounds. So then their body weight would be effectively 180 pounds. When their arms are bent and the chin over the bar, the same band only applies 12 pounds. So at the top, with less resistance at the top, it's only 12 pounds of resistance. So 20 pounds is still too light at the bottom, and at the same time, 12 pounds at the top isn't enough either to help them get their chin over the bar. So in the next example, we use the same red band under one foot, but add a green band, which is thicker, has more resistance under the other knee. The red band offers 20 pounds at the bottom, and the green band offers 55 pounds at the bottom. So you get a total of 75 pounds of resistance at the bottom. This is plenty of help at the bottom to help them through the initial movement of the chin up when they're weakest. At the top, the red band is again 12 pounds, and the green band is 20 pounds, for a total of 32 pounds of extra help at the top. So 200 pounds minus 32 pounds. In this example, and with a specific person, this band combination works really well. So why not just use 2 red bands or 2 green bands under the feet? You can, but each combination will yield a different bottom resistance, middle resistance, and top resistance. Thick bands, thin bands, bands under 1 foot, bands under 2 feet, bands under 1 foot and 1 knee. Experiment and see which combination works best for you. Okay, finally, fun with bands. We're going to use rowing, adding a resistance band to a rowing exercise. Why? 1. Variable resistance matching the strength curve. The band provides progressive resistance. The further it stretches, the more resistance it generates, which matches the body's strength curve during a rowing stroke. 2. Increased posterior chain engagement. The additional resistance encourages greater glute, hamstring, and lower back activation. The posterior chain has to work harder to drive against both the flywheel and the band's pull. Since rowers can sometimes over-rely on quads, the setup reinforces balance power generation. 3. Core and hip stability. The band's constant pull forward challenges core stability. Improved acceleration and power development. Number 4. Rowers tend to lose tension or coast once the flywheel reaches high speed. The band prevents this, demanding constant acceleration throughout the stroke. Mind-body connection. Because the band provides an external resistance force that's different from the flywheel, athletes often have to develop better body awareness. Reduced eccentric loading. Bands provide minimal eccentric resistance on the return recovery phase of the stroke. Note that I control the resistance so that resistance is variable, not constant, and that I can also control the angle of tension, both essential for performance and safety. Okay, this last exercise is fun with abs. So we're applying the same principles, but we're moving the seat, and we're using the band to provide X resistance and variable resistance. That's a lot of fun, something to try also. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about this topic and many more about health, fitness, nutrition, motivation, inspiration, and wellness strategies, check out my 2 latest books. The first one, the Biomechanics Body. I know, it's a tough name. What was I thinking? Fitness strategies from the animal kingdom and the 16 elements of fitness. Biomechanics basically means imitating nature to solve problems. And in this case, I used biology, chemistry, and engineering to solve exercise and nutrition challenges. Or more precisely, I used animals. Some of the 16 animals we discussed are the ant, the frog, the gorilla, the sloth, the octopus, and many more animals. You will learn how, why, when, and where to exercise, and the right exercises just for you. All right, and then my other book, If Inner Fitness, Your Body, the Owner's Manual. The title speaks for itself. Cars come with an owner's manual. Your computer comes with an owner's manual. Just about every product comes with an owner's manual or instruction booklet. Why not our bodies? I wrote the first edition of this book 25 years ago. Or more, actually. And this is the second edition with over 200 more pages of information about fitness, nutrition, and psychology. If you have a question about fitness, I guarantee you the answer is in this book.